The morning sun cast long shadows across the grounds of Adelaide Cottage as Prince William stepped out of his black Range Rover. He had just returned from a 3-day tour of Scotland, visiting communities affected by recent flooding. The trip had been emotionally draining, meeting families who had lost everything, listening to their stories of resilience and hope. Now, all he wanted was to be home with his family. As William walked toward the front door, he noticed something unusual. The house seemed quieter than normal. Usually, by this time of morning, he could hear the children's laughter echoing from inside, or the sound of Kate moving around in the kitchen, preparing breakfast. Today, there was an almost eerie silence that made him pause on the doorstep. He fumbled for his keys, but as his hand touched the door handle, he realized it was already unlocked. This was strange because Kate was always careful about security, especially when he was away. A flutter of concern crossed his mind, but he pushed it aside, thinking perhaps she had just stepped outside to the garden with the children. William turned the handle slowly and pushed the door open. The entrance hall was dimly lit, with only the natural light filtering through the stained glass window above the door. He called out softly, not wanting to startle anyone if they were still sleeping. There was no response. As he stepped further into the house, William began to notice small details that seemed out of place. Kate's favorite coffee mug sat on the hall table, half empty and cold. Her reading glasses lay beside it, something she never left behind when moving around the house. The morning newspaper was still folded and unopened, which was unusual because Kate always read the headlines over her first cup of coffee. The silence continued to unnerve him. Where were George, Charlotte, and Louis? On a Saturday morning like this, they would typically be up early, either playing in their rooms or helping Kate with breakfast. The absence of their usual chatter and footsteps made the house feel hollow and strange. William made his way toward the kitchen, his footsteps echoing more loudly than usual in the quiet space. As he passed the living room, he glanced inside and saw that the cushions on the sofa were arranged perfectly, as if no one had sat there all morning. A children's book lay open on the coffee table, abandoned mid-story. The kitchen, when he reached it, showed signs of interrupted activity. Breakfast ingredients were laid out on the counter: eggs, bread, butter, and jam, but nothing had been prepared. It looked as though Kate had started to make breakfast but had been called away suddenly. A small pot of water sat on the stove, cold and unused. William felt his concern growing. He pulled out his phone to call Kate, but then remembered she had mentioned something about a special surprise before he left for Scotland. She had been mysterious about it, smiling in that particular way she did when she was planning something special for the family. Perhaps this silence was part of whatever she had been organizing. He decided to check the garden. Maybe they had all gone outside for an early morning activity. As he walked toward the back door, he passed the children's playroom. The door was slightly ajar and he could see toys scattered across the floor, but again no sign of his family. The garden was empty too. The swing set stood motionless, the slide gleaming with morning dew. Kate's herb garden showed signs of recent attention. She must have been out there the day before tending to her plants. But there was no indication of where everyone might have gone this morning. William returned to the house, his mind racing through possibilities. Had there been a family emergency he didn't know about? Had Kate taken the children somewhere special as part of the surprise she had mentioned? He checked his phone again for messages, but found none. As he stood in the hallway trying to decide what to do next, he heard a sound that made him freeze. It was faint, almost like a whisper coming from upstairs. It could have been the wind, but something about it made his heart skip. He looked up toward the staircase, its polished wooden steps disappearing into the shadows of the upper floor. The sound came again, clearer this time. It wasn't the wind. Someone was upstairs, and they seemed to be trying to be very quiet. William felt a mix of relief and curiosity. His family was home after all, but why the secrecy? Why the careful quiet? He began to climb the stairs, each step creaking slightly under his weight despite his efforts to move silently. As he reached the landing, he could hear more clearly now. There were definitely voices, hushed and careful, coming from the direction of the master bedroom. He could make out Kate's voice among them, though he couldn't understand what she was saying. William approached the bedroom door, which was closed. The voices became more distinct, and he realized there were several people in the room. Along with Kate, he could hear the children and possibly someone else. His curiosity overrode his caution as he reached for the door handle. wondering what kind of surprise awaited him behind that door. William paused with his hand on the door handle, listening more carefully to the voices inside. He could distinguish Kate's gentle tone, speaking in the soft, encouraging way she used when helping the children with something important. George's voice was there too, slightly more excited than the others, though still maintaining the hushed quality that seemed to pervade the house this morning. Charlotte's distinctive giggle broke through the whispers, quickly followed by what sounded like Louis being gently shushed. William smiled despite his confusion. Whatever was happening behind that door, his children were clearly enjoying themselves. The secrecy was beginning to make more sense. This had to be the surprise Kate had hinted at before his trip. He considered knocking, but something held him back. The careful quiet, the obvious effort everyone was making to keep their voices down, suggested that his arrival was either not expected yet or was meant to be a surprise in itself. He decided to wait a moment longer, trying to piece together what might be happening. Through the door, he heard the sound of paper rustling, followed by Kate's voice saying something about being very careful and making sure everything is perfect. The children responded with eager whispers, their excitement barely contained despite their efforts to remain quiet. Then he heard another voice that made him pause. It was older, more mature than the children, but not Kate's voice. It sounded familiar, but he couldn't quite place it. The voice was giving gentle instructions about something, speaking with the kind of authority that suggested expertise in whatever activity was taking place. William's curiosity intensified. Who else was in the bedroom with his family? The voice didn't belong to any of their usual staff members, nor did it sound like any of their close friends or family members he could immediately identify. The mystery deepened, and with it, his eagerness to discover what was behind the door. He heard footsteps moving around inside the room, light and careful, as if people were arranging themselves or moving objects into position. Kate's voice came again, this time with a note of satisfaction, saying something about perfect timing and how he'll be so surprised. The realization hit him that he almost certainly referred to William himself. This surprise, whatever it was, had been planned around his return from Scotland. The timing of everything, the quiet house, the careful preparations, the anticipation in everyone's voices, it all pointed to something special waiting for him behind that door. William found himself torn between the desire to discover the surprise immediately and the wish to let it unfold as Kate had planned. He knew how much thought and care she put into making special moments for their family. Some of his most treasured memories came from the simple, heartfelt surprises she had orchestrated over the years. The sounds from inside the room shifted slightly. He heard what might have been the scraping of furniture being moved, followed by more whispered instructions. Charlotte's voice piped up with what sounded like a question, quickly answered by the unfamiliar voice with patient kindness. As William continued to listen, trying to decipher the activity inside, he became aware of a subtle change in the atmosphere. The morning light streaming through the hallway window had grown brighter, and he realized that time was passing. Whatever was being prepared in the bedroom seemed to be reaching completion. Kate's voice came through the door again, this time with a different quality. She sounded emotional, though he couldn't tell if it was excitement, happiness, or something deeper. Her words were too muffled to understand clearly, but the tone suggested that whatever was happening was meaningful to her in a profound way. The children's voices had become more subdued, as if they too were being affected by the emotional weight of the moment. Even Louis, typically the most boisterous of the three, seemed to be speaking in reverent whispers. William realized that this surprise was more than just a fun family activity. There was something significant happening, something that had moved Kate to organize this careful, quiet preparation. His hand tightened on the door handle as he debated whether to announce his presence or continue waiting. The decision was made for him when he heard Kate's voice, clearer now, saying something about, "When Daddy opens the door." The phrase sent a small thrill through him. They were expecting him to discover them. This was the moment they had been preparing for. He took a deep breath, steadying himself for whatever revelation awaited him. The love and care that had gone into this surprise was already evident, just from listening to his family's careful preparations.
Kate's ability to create these special moments never ceased to amaze him.
And he felt a surge of gratitude for the life they had built together. William turned the handle slowly, not wanting to startle anyone inside, As the door began to open, he heard a collective intake of breath from inside the room. The surprise was about to be revealed, and from the emotion he had heard in Kate's voice, he knew it was going to be something that would stay with him forever. As the door swung open, William was greeted by a sight that made him stop in his tracks. The bedroom had been transformed into something entirely unexpected. Soft morning light filtered through the curtains, casting a warm glow over a scene that was both intimate and extraordinary. Kate stood near the window, her face radiant with an expression William had rarely seen before. It was a mixture of joy, anticipation, and something deeper, a profound sense of purpose. She was dressed simply in a light blue sweater and jeans, but there was an elegance about her posture that suggested this moment held special significance. The children were arranged around the room, each in their own space but clearly part of a coordinated scene. George stood near the foot of the bed, his usually energetic demeanor replaced by an unusual stillness and focus. He was holding something in his hands, though from the doorway William couldn't make out what it was. Charlotte sat cross-legged on the floor near Kate, her dress spread neatly around her. Her typical chatter had given way to an almost ceremonious quiet, and she looked up at William with eyes bright with excitement and something that looked like pride. Louis, their youngest, was perched on the edge of a chair that had been moved close to the window. Despite his age, he seemed to understand the importance of the moment, sitting with unusual patience and watching William's reaction with keen interest. But it was the fourth person in the room who truly captured William's attention. An elderly woman sat in Kate's reading chair, which had been positioned to catch the best light from the window. She was small and delicate, with silver white hair pulled back in a neat bun and hands that showed the gentle wear of many years. The woman's eyes met William's as he entered the room, and he felt an immediate sense of recognition, though he couldn't place where he might have met her before. There was something familiar about her bearing, her gentle smile, the way she held herself with quiet dignity despite her obvious age. Kate moved toward William, her eyes bright with unshed tears. "William," she said softly, her voice carrying all the emotion he had heard through the door. "I want you to meet someone very special." The elderly woman rose slowly from the chair, supported by a walking stick that had been resting against the armrest. As she stood, William could see she was wearing a simple but elegant dress in navy blue, with a small brooch pinned to her collar. Despite her age, there was strength in her movements and clarity in her gaze. "Your Royal Highness," the woman said, her voice carrying the refined accent of someone well-educated but not aristocratic. "It is an honor to finally meet you properly." William found himself momentarily speechless. The formal address suggested this wasn't just a family friend, and the word "finally" implied some previous connection he couldn't recall. He looked to Kate for guidance, seeing in her face a mixture of emotions that included excitement, nervousness, and profound love. Kate moved closer to the elderly woman, placing a gentle hand on her arm. "William," she said, her voice thick with emotion, "this is Mrs. Eleanor Davies. She was your mother's personal secretary during the last 3 years of her life." The words hit William like a physical blow. He felt his breath catch as the significance of the moment crashed over him. His mother's personal secretary, someone who had been with Diana during some of her most important years, who had witnessed her private moments, her struggles, her joys. Mrs. Davies stepped forward slightly, her eyes never leaving William's face. "I worked very closely with your mother," she said gently. "She spoke of you and Harry every day. You were the light of her life, the source of her greatest pride and deepest love." William felt his composure beginning to crack. He hadn't expected this, hadn't prepared himself for such a direct connection to his mother. The children watched in silent fascination as their father processed this revelation, understanding instinctively that something important was happening, even if they couldn't grasp all the details. Kate moved to William's side, her hand finding his arm in a gesture of support. "Mrs. Davies reached out to me several months ago," she explained softly. "She had some things of your mother's that she thought you should have, things that were too personal to go through the usual channels." George stepped forward then, extending what he had been holding in his hands. It was a small wooden box polished to a warm sheen, with brass hinges that caught the morning light. "Granny Princess gave this to Mrs. Davies," George said solemnly. Using the term the children had been taught for Diana, The grandmother they would never meet but who remained a presence in their lives through stories and photographs. Mrs. Davies nodded, her own eyes glistening with moisture. "Your mother asked me to keep this safe," she said, her voice steady despite the emotion underlying it. "She made me promise that if anything happened to her, I would make sure it reached you when the time was right." William reached out with trembling hands to accept the box from George. It was heavier than he had expected, and he could feel the weight of history in it, the weight of his mother's final wishes and thoughts. The wood was smooth under his fingers, worn by handling and time. "She chose each item specifically for you," Mrs. Davies continued. "Some were meant for Harry as well, but this particular collection was for you alone. She said you would understand their significance when you were ready." The room fell into complete silence as William held the box, feeling the connection to his mother stronger than he had in years. Kate stood beside him, tears now flowing freely down her cheeks as she witnessed this moment she had carefully orchestrated, this gift she had helped bring to fruition. William's hands trembled as he held the wooden box, feeling the smooth surface that his mother had once touched. The weight of it seemed to carry decades of love, loss, and unspoken words. He looked up at Mrs. Davies, whose kind eyes held the compassion of someone who had witnessed both joy and sorrow in their purest forms. "She knew," Mrs. Davies said softly, settling back into her chair as if the standing had taken considerable effort. "Even in those final months, your mother had a sense that her time might be limited. She didn't speak of it directly, but there was an urgency in how she organized her personal effects, especially the items meant for you and Harry." Kate guided William to sit on the edge of the bed, recognizing that he needed support for what was to come. Charlotte moved closer to her father, her small hand resting on his knee in a gesture of comfort that reminded him poignantly of his mother's own intuitive kindness. "What's inside?" Louis asked with the directness that only young children possess, his whispered question breaking the heavy silence that had settled over the room. Mrs. Davies smiled at Louis with genuine warmth. "Things that your grandmother treasured most, little one. Memories that she wanted your father to have." William found his voice, though it came out rougher than usual. "How did you find Kate? How did this all come about?" Mrs. Davies glanced at Kate before answering. "I've been trying to find the right way to deliver these items for many years. The official channel seemed too impersonal for something so private. When I read about your work with mental health awareness, I knew the time was right. Your mother would be so proud of how you've honored her memory through your charitable work." Kate wiped her eyes before speaking. "Mrs. Davies wrote to me through the foundation office. When I read her letter, I knew immediately that this was something special. She's been caring for these items for over 25 years, William. 25 years of keeping a promise to your mother." George, who had been listening with the serious attention he reserved for truly important matters, stepped closer to Mrs. Davies. "Did you really know our daddy's mummy?" he asked, his young voice filled with wonder. "Oh yes, dear boy," Mrs. Davies replied, her face lighting up with fond memories. "I knew her very well indeed. She was one of the most caring people I ever met. She had the most beautiful laugh, and she could make anyone feel special just by listening to them." William felt tears beginning to form as he listened to this stranger speak about his mother with such genuine affection. It had been years since he had heard someone share personal memories of Diana, memories that weren't filtered through media reports or official biographies. "She talked about you constantly," Mrs. Davies continued, her attention turning back to William, "about how proud she was of your kindness, your sense of responsibility. She worried about the pressure you would face, but she never doubted your strength." Charlotte tugged gently on Kate's sleeve. "Mummy, why is Daddy crying?" Kate knelt down to Charlotte's level, speaking in the gentle tone she used to explain complex emotions to their children. "Sometimes we cry when we feel very happy and very sad at the same time, sweetheart. Daddy is thinking about his mummy, whom he loved very much." Mrs. Davies reached into a small handbag beside her chair and withdrew a folded letter. "Before you open the box," she said, extending the paper toward William, "your mother wanted you to read this first. She wrote it the week before her trip to Paris." William's heart stopped for a moment, a letter written just days before his mother's death. Words that represented some of her final thoughts, perhaps her last message to him. His hand shook as he accepted the folded paper, feeling the slight yellowing of age around the edges. The letter was written in his mother's familiar handwriting, the elegant script he remembered from birthday cards and notes she used to leave in his school bag. Seeing it again after so many years brought a flood of memories. Her sitting at her desk at Kensington Palace, writing thank you notes to charity supporters, or working late into the evening on speeches for her various causes. Read it aloud, if you feel comfortable, Mrs. Davies suggested gently. She wrote it hoping that someday your own children might hear her words. William looked around the room at his family, Kate with tears streaming down her face, the children watching with rapt attention, Mrs. Davies sitting with the patient dignity of someone who had carried this burden of love for decades. This was exactly what his mother would have wanted, he realized. Not a formal ceremony or official presentation, but an intimate family moment filled with love and connection. He unfolded the letter carefully, noting how his mother had written it on her personal stationery, the paper cream-colored with her initials embossed at the top. The date was clearly visible, just 8 days before the car accident that would change everything. "My dearest William," he began, his voice catching slightly on the familiar endearment. The children moved closer, sensing the importance of these words from the grandmother they had never met, but who had shaped their father's life in countless ways. As William continued reading, Mrs. Davies watched with satisfaction mixed with sorrow. She had carried this responsibility for so long, through her own aging and the changing of decades. Finally, she was fulfilling the promise she had made to a young woman who had died far too early, ensuring that a mother's love would reach her son exactly when he needed it most. William's voice steadied as he continued reading his mother's letter, each word carrying the weight of love across the years. "I know that by the time you read this, many years will have passed, and you will have grown into the remarkable man I already see in you. I hope you have found love, real love, the kind that makes you laugh and challenges you to be your best self." Kate's breath caught audibly, and William glanced up to see her pressing her hand to her mouth, tears flowing freely. Even without knowing Kate's name or face, Diana had somehow described their relationship perfectly. "I pray that you have children of your own," William continued, his voice growing stronger with each word. "I dream of the grandfather your father will be, and I imagine you as a wonderful daddy, patient and kind, teaching your children to see the beauty in ordinary moments." Louis clapped his hands together softly, delighted at being mentioned in a letter from so long ago, even though he couldn't fully understand how his existence had been anticipated by a grandmother he never met. "There are items in the box that Mrs. Davies will give you. Each one represents a memory I want to share with your family. The small silver locket belonged to your great-grandmother, Queen Mary. Inside, you'll find a photo of your father as a baby. I thought your children might like to see how much you resembled him." George perked up with interest. "Can we see it, Daddy?" William nodded, carefully setting the letter aside and opening the wooden box. The hinges creaked slightly, releasing the faint scent of lavender, his mother's favorite fragrance. Inside, nestled in blue velvet, were several small items that seemed to glow in the morning light. The locket was the first thing he lifted out, its silver surface tarnished with age, but still beautiful. When he opened it, there indeed was a tiny photograph of his father as an infant, the resemblance to George so striking that Charlotte gasped in amazement. "Daddy, you look just like George when you were little," she exclaimed, leaning in for a closer look. Mrs. Davies smiled at the children's wonder. "Your grandmother was right. She said the family resemblance would be remarkable." William continued exploring the box's contents as he resumed reading the letter. "The small leather journal contains stories I wrote for you and Harry when you were babies, silly tales about brave princes and magical adventures. I hoped that one day you might read them to your own children." Kate wiped her eyes as she watched William lift out a slim journal bound in soft brown leather. The cover was worn smooth from handling, and when he opened it, they could see Diana's handwriting in a more casual style, accompanying small sketches and doodles in the margins. "The pearl earrings were my mother's, your grandmother Frances. I want your wife to have them, whoever she may be. I know you will choose someone wonderful, someone who will love you for who you truly are, not for your title or position." William looked directly at Kate as he read these words, seeing in her face the woman his mother had somehow known he would find. Kate's hand went instinctively to her own earrings, overwhelmed by the thought of wearing jewelry chosen for her by a woman she never met, but whose love had shaped the man she married. Mrs. Davies spoke up softly. She was very specific about those earrings. She said they should go to someone who would appreciate their history, not their value. The wooden horse was your favorite toy when you were 3 years old. William continued reading. You carried it everywhere, and it bears the marks of all your adventures. I saved it hoping that perhaps your son might love it too. William lifted out a small carved horse, its paint faded and chipped from years of play. As soon as he saw it, memories came flooding back. Carrying it to kindergarten, sleeping with it during thunderstorms, taking it on family holidays. He had forgotten about this treasured companion until this moment. George's eyes lit up as he saw the toy. Can I play with it, Daddy? Of course, George. That's exactly what Granny Princess would have wanted. The letter continued with more personal items and memories, each one carefully chosen and explained. There was a pressed flower from Diana's wedding bouquet, a small book of poetry she had loved, and a simple gold bracelet engraved with the date of William's birth. As William reached the end of the letter, his voice became thick with emotion. My darling son, I cannot know what challenges you will face or what joys await you, but I want you to remember that you are loved beyond measure. Not because of your royal birth, but because of your beautiful heart. Be kind to yourself. Forgive your mistakes and never forget that you have the power to make this world a little brighter just by being in it. The room fell completely silent except for the soft sounds of quiet crying. Even the children seemed to understand. They had witnessed something extraordinary, a mother's love, transcending death and time to reach her son. Exactly when he needed it most, Mrs. Davies reached into her bag once more and withdrew a small envelope. There's one more thing, she said gently. Your mother asked me to give this to your wife when you found her. Kate looked surprised, accepting the envelope with trembling hands. Her name was written on it in Diana's handwriting, though Diana could never have known what Kate's name would be. She simply wrote, "For William's beloved wife," Mrs. Davies explained. She said any woman worthy of your love would understand its contents. As Kate carefully opened the envelope, William marveled at his mother's foresight and the incredible gift that Kate had arranged. This moment, this careful orchestration of love and memory, was exactly the kind of meaningful surprise that made their marriage so special. Kate's hands trembled as she unfolded the letter addressed to William's beloved wife. The paper was different from William's letter, softer, more delicate, as if Diana had chosen it specifically for this more intimate message. Kate took a deep breath before beginning to read aloud, her voice barely above a whisper. To the woman who will love my son, Kate read, her voice breaking slightly on the opening words. I do not know your name, your face, or where you come from, but I know your heart. You will be someone who sees past the crown to find the man underneath. You will be his anchor when the storms of public life become too strong. William moved closer to Kate, wrapping his arm around her shoulders as she continued reading. The children gathered around them, sensing the profound intimacy of this moment even if they couldn't fully grasp its significance. You will understand that loving William means sharing him with the world, but never forget that he needs someone who is entirely his own. In the quiet moments, in the privacy of your home, he needs to simply be a husband and father, not a prince. Mrs. Davies watched with deep satisfaction as Kate read words that Diana had somehow perfectly tailored to the woman who would eventually claim her son's heart. The accuracy of Diana's predictions was almost uncanny, as if she had looked into the future and seen Kate's gentle strength and unwavering support. I hope you will be patient with his need for privacy, understanding that it comes not from arrogance but from necessity. The world will watch your every move, analyze your every choice, but remember that the only opinions that truly matter are those of the people you love. Kate paused, wiping tears from her cheeks. These words spoke directly to her own experience of joining the royal family, the challenges she had faced in finding her place while remaining true to herself. Charlotte tugged on her mother's dress. Mummy, why did Granny Princess write to you if she didn't know you? Kate looked down at her daughter with a watery smile. Sometimes people can feel love for others even before they meet them, sweetheart. Granny Princess loved Daddy so much that she already loved anyone who would make him happy. William squeezed Kate's shoulder encouragingly as she continued reading. The most important gift you can give him is normalcy. Help him remember what it feels like to laugh without considering who might be watching. Remind him that his worth is not measured by public approval, but by the love he gives and receives. Mrs. Davies leaned forward slightly in her chair. She spent hours writing those letters, she said softly. She would write a few lines, then stop to think, sometimes for long periods. She wanted every word to be exactly right. "I know you will be a wonderful mother," Kate continued, her voice gaining strength. "You will teach your children to be proud of their heritage while keeping their feet firmly planted in the real world. You will show them that true nobility comes from kindness, not birthright." George looked up at his mother with new understanding. "Like how you teach us to be nice to everyone, even when people want to take our picture." "Exactly like that, George," Kate replied, stroking his hair gently. "There will be times when the weight of duty feels too heavy for both of you. In those moments, remember that love is the greatest service you can offer, to each other, to your children, and to the people who look to your family for hope and inspiration." William felt a surge of gratitude for both women, his mother, whose wisdom had somehow reached across decades to guide his marriage, and Kate, whose strength and grace had made Diana's dreams for his happiness come true. "I am writing this knowing I may never meet you, but I am not sad about that. I am filled with joy knowing that William will find someone who will love him as completely as I do. Please tell him that his mother's love travels with him always, and now it extends to you and the children you will have together." The letter concluded with a simple blessing. "May your home always be filled with laughter. May your love grow stronger with each passing year, and may you never forget the extraordinary gift you have in choosing to love each other every single day." Kate folded the letter carefully, holding it against her chest as if to keep its words close to her heart. The room was filled with the profound silence that follows moments of deep emotional impact. Mrs. Davies spoke into the quiet. "There's one final thing your mother asked me to tell you both when the time was right." She paused, gathering her thoughts. "She said that the greatest revenge against those who would try to diminish your happiness is to live joyfully, love openly, and raise your children to believe in the goodness of the world." William stood up, still holding the wooden box, and walked over to Mrs. Davies. "Thank you," he said simply, his voice thick with emotion. "Thank you for keeping your promise to her, and thank you for finding Kate. This is the most precious gift our family could have received." Mrs. Davies smiled, reaching up to pat William's hand. "It was my honor, Your Royal Highness. Your mother would be so proud of the man you've become and the family you've built." Louis climbed onto Kate's lap, sensing that his parents needed comfort. "Will you tell us stories about Granny Princess?" he asked Mrs. Davies with the directness of a young child. "I would be delighted to, little one," Mrs. Davies replied warmly. "I have many wonderful stories to share." As the morning sun climbed higher in the sky, the family settled in to listen to Mrs. Davies's memories, surrounded by the tangible love that Diana had carefully preserved for this exact moment. Kate looked at William, seeing in his face a peace she hadn't seen in years, as if a part of him that had been missing had finally been returned. The afternoon sun streamed through the bedroom windows as Mrs. Davies finished her final story about Diana's work at the Children's Hospital. The children had listened with rapt attention to tales of their grandmother's gentle humor, her ability to make sick children laugh, and her habit of sneaking extra treats to young patients when the nurses weren't looking. William sat holding the wooden horse from his childhood, turning it over in his hands as memories continued to surface. George had played with it for nearly an hour, galloping it across the bedspread and creating elaborate adventures, just as William had done decades earlier. The sight had filled William with a profound sense of continuity, of love passing from one generation to the next. Kate had carefully placed Diana's pearl earrings in her jewelry box, promising Mrs. Davies that she would wear them to the next state dinner. The elderly woman had smiled with deep satisfaction, knowing that Diana's wishes were being honored exactly as intended. As the day progressed, Mrs. Davies shared more personal details about Diana's final months. She spoke of how Diana had organized her affairs with unusual care, writing letters to friends, updating her will, and spending extra time with William and Harry during their school holidays. It wasn't that she had a premonition of her death, Mrs. Davies explained, but rather that she had developed a deeper appreciation for the preciousness of time. She talked often about wanting to be remembered not for her title, but for the love she gave, Mrs. Davies said as she prepared to leave. She worried that the formality of royal life might overshadow the simple truth that she was, above all, a mother who adored her children. William walked Mrs. Davies to her car personally, something that surprised the elderly woman despite her years of royal protocol. As they stood by her modest sedan, she reached into her handbag one final time. "There's something else," she said, withdrawing a small photo album. These are pictures I took during my time with your mother. Informal moments, times when she was just being herself. I thought you might like to have them." William accepted the album with trembling hands. The cover was simple leather, worn soft with age. As he opened it, he saw candid photographs of his mother that he had never seen before. Diana laughing at her desk. Diana reading in the garden at Kensington Palace. Diana working late into the evening on correspondence. These weren't official portraits or public photographs, but intimate glimpses of a woman at work and at peace. She was beautiful, Mrs. Davies said simply, not just in appearance but in spirit. She had this way of making everyone around her feel valued and heard. As Mrs. Davies drove away, William stood in the driveway holding the photo album, feeling as though he had been given back a piece of his mother he never knew was missing. Kate joined him, slipping her hand into his free one. "She would be so proud of you," Kate said softly. "Of the father you are, the husband you are, the man you've become." They walked back into the house together, where the children were playing quietly with the items from Diana's box. Charlotte had claimed the small journal of stories and was carefully turning its pages, studying the drawings and handwriting. Louis was arranging the pressed flowers on the coffee table, creating patterns with the delicate petals. That evening, after the children were in bed, William and Kate sat together in their living room, surrounded by the tangible reminders of Diana's love. The wooden box sat open on the coffee table, its contents creating a small shrine of memory and connection. "How did you know?" William asked Kate. "How did you know this was exactly what I needed?" Kate smiled, reaching for his hand. "Because I know you. I've watched you carry the weight of missing her for all these years. When Mrs. Davies wrote to me, describing what she had preserved, I knew it wasn't just objects she was offering. It was closure and connection, and proof that a mother's love really can transcend anything." William pulled Kate closer, overwhelmed by gratitude for the woman who had orchestrated this perfect gift. "She wrote those letters as if she knew you personally. Every word could have been describing our actual life together. Maybe love recognizes love," Kate replied thoughtfully. "Maybe she could imagine the kind of person who would make you happy because she knew your heart so well." As they prepared for bed that night, William placed the photo album on his bedside table, where he could see it first thing in the morning. The wooden box would go in their bedroom safe, its contents preserved for future generations, but the photos would remain accessible, a daily reminder of the mother who had shaped his understanding of love and service. Kate fastened Diana's pearl earrings in her ears, studying her reflection in the mirror. They fit perfectly, as if they had been made for her. In the morning, she would call her own mother to tell her about the extraordinary day, about the gift that had brought the past and present together in such a meaningful way. Before turning off the lights, William opened the photo album one more time. There on the final page was a photograph he hadn't noticed earlier. It showed Diana at her desk, writing intently, her face focused and peaceful. In the margin, Mrs. Davies had written in careful script, "Writing letters to her boys, August 1997. William realized he was looking at his mother in the very act of creating the gift he had received today. The circularity of it, the perfect completion of her intention, filled him with a sense of wonder at the mysterious ways love finds its way across time and loss. As he closed the album and turned off the light, William felt his mother's presence more strongly than he had in years. Not as a ghost or a memory, but as a living force of love that would continue to guide and bless his family for generations to come. Kate had given him more than treasured objects. She had given him back his mother's voice, her wisdom, and her eternal blessing on the life he had built.